This is 5:15. I'd like to call the planning commission meeting to order. Stand for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Just so everybody knows, Randy Buss is off and Jeff Hunchke is going to be taking his place.
So Jeff is a new commission member, so.
Welcome.
Welcome.
Everybody. Thank you.
I look for a motion to adopt the agenda.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Motion made and second to adopt the agenda. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So moved. Look for approval of the October 26th meeting minutes.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
Motion made and second to approve the October 26th meeting minutes. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Comprehensive plan. Okay, here we go. Good evening. Good evening.
How's everyone doing tonight?
Good.
Glad it snowed last night and not tonight, so, but, kind of in the final stages here with the comprehensive plan tonight. We need to kind of briefly review the implementation element, and then I'll, explain what the next steps are to kind of wrap things up. But everyone should have, received a copy of chapter 9, the implementation section. I'm not going to go through this page by page, but, want to give you at least a little overview of what it contains. The first part generally mirrors the recommendations that are contained in all the previous plan elements that this committee has taken a look at. And so it really mirrors that, a few additional items. One thing that we wanted to do, because comprehensive plans typically contain a lot of recommendations, more than probably any community can implement in over time. We wanted to try and sift through that and see if we could bring some things to the surface that might be considered priority. So working with staff, with Chad and with Dave, reviewing the recommendations, we inserted section 9.2 on the first page, stating maybe the top 5 implementation recommendations. Now, these can change based on your thoughts, your input. Certainly, this is not set in stone, but maybe a starting point for discussion. But we feel that a number of recommendations will help the city move the needle maybe further in a number of areas than some of the other recommendations, which are sort of small and maybe incremental, or things that will take a lot of time or happen over time. So we thought the priority plan recommendations ought to be the 5 that you see here. And these are not in any particular priority order. I should probably say that in the brief narrative. But certainly continuing to support and participate in downtown revitalization activities. I think your downtown has come a long way. City has put a lot of effort. The businesses have put a lot of effort into things, and you want to keep that momentum. I think it's fair to say that you've got a lot of good things going on. Keep them going and stay involved and engaged. Oversee, manage, use your authority where you have it. As you see fit, but that definitely should be one of the strong recommendations. Second is very similar, but really looking at the riverfront. And I know this has been a conversation for years within the community, and it's not like nothing's been done, but there still seems to be a need, a desire to really focus on that riverfront. And I think, with downtown kind of getting up to speed, some of those things will happen naturally within at least some of those areas, but you'll want to look at the entire riverfront, and that's obviously discussed in some of the previous plan chapters. Develop and update official map. At this point, I don't think anyone has found an official map yet. And that is really a critical tool in terms of helping to direct and manage growth from the transportation system perspective. So having that as a legal document, having future streets shown on that map, having future parks and trails as well, and the like, will assist in preventing development from happening where it should not. An official map is different than the map that you see in the comprehensive plan. The authority comes from elsewhere in the state statutes. And there's a separate process to create and approve the official map. But once that is done, if you have a street segment that's extended into a farm field on the north side of town, saying, you know, we want to make sure we've got a good connection between point A and point B, and you put that on the map, it basically would prevent a permit from being issued that would impact that right of way. So you're not saying you're ever going to build that road, or it may be sometime in the future, but you're reserving that right of way, and you're ensuring that someone doesn't go place their house or a shed or a barn or something across it in the interim. So it is a very critical tool, and it's one that I've learned over the years that communities don't seem to use or have or take stock of greatly. So definitely something that needs to be considered. Review and update the zoning ordinance and map, including all the design standards. This, I think, has been on the city's wish list for a while. The ordinance you have is quite outdated. I've sifted through it a bit to get familiar with it, and it's dated, it's old, it's clunky. It's, you know, we kind of talk, I'm not sure if it's jokingly or not, might be better off tossing that one completely and starting from scratch with a different template when that time comes. You know, I do know the city's talking about perhaps initiating that project next year, and certainly Cedar would be interested in helping out on that, and we'll stay in touch with Chad in terms of that process. Same thing with the subdivision ordinance, probably less cumbersome and clunky, but still somewhat dated. And I think looking at some of the concepts that we've discussed, particularly using missing middle housing, for example, you're probably going to want to go in, you're going to want to make some changes, some tweaks to the subdivision ordinance and those standards. Same with the zoning ordinance, taking a look at new uses, lot sizes, all those kinds of things. It's usually pretty difficult to do both of those things at once. So this is scheduled for a few years later after you get through the zoning ordinance project. So those are the top 5 that kind of came to mind through discussions with staff. The remainder of the recommendation, starting on page 9 or section 9.3 on the second page, and number of pages after, like I said, are pretty much taken from previous sections of the plan. But I guess I'd like to stop and at least entertain a little bit of discussion, get your thoughts and feelings on what you see as some of the priority recommendations. Do you agree with the 5 that are listed? Do you want to put them in priority order? Do you want to get rid of one, replace it with something else? Any thoughts?
Well, I'm thinking if we're going to take this to the council as far as for approval, I think one of the main things that we should be working on that would at least give a good look that the planning commission is doing something to support this comprehensive plan is to start working immediately on that official map. To me, that seems like a kind of a no-brainer, that's something that we need to have if we're going to submit this to the council for approval and work towards that.
On a staffing end, I'll just kind of, I'll mimic that, and I'll raise you by the zoning ordinance as well.
Okay,
I mean,
Yep.
Dave and I have talked about our zoning ordinance, and Eric just kind of referred as an outside entity looking at it. Our zoning ordinance
Mhm.
needs a lot of work.
well, I just think that we have to really, is when we look at our, recommendations for upcoming agenda items, we have to really start having something locked in that's what we're going to work on, and not just whatever comes up, I guess is what I'm saying. We have to have a direction, a plan to move forward with
Yeah,
it.
after this project is done, what else are you going to do?
That's right.
Just
That's
review and
right.
criticize everybody else's
That's right.
proposals.
Well, and if you're going to do a good job with zoning, you're going to need a perfect map.
Right.
Yeah, they're definitely both necessary items. I'm not convinced one should come before the other. Those two things could be done parallel, at the same time. Official map process will not take nearly as much time as it would a zoning ordinance update, which is why we put by the end of 2023 for the official map, and the completion of the
Mhm.
zoning ordinance by the end of the following year. Because doing a complete zoning overhaul can take a year minimum just to go through things. So, but I'm hearing that you think the official map ought to be
Well,
the highest priority.
you know,
perhaps.
whatever. I just think that we have to, as a planning commission, that we need to have direction as to how we're going to approach this comprehensive plan. I mean, if we're going to submit it and say, this is what we want you now to approve, and this is what we're going to do, and then we do nothing. I mean, I think it is something that we have to be committed that we're going to go forward now with it.
I would agree.
And I think by stating our preferences,
Mhm,
it shows that we really do have a vested interest
mhm.
in seeing that it gets accomplished.
Do you think we should have that on the agenda every month for the map till we get done with it?
Well, I don't know what's all involved in it. So I guess that's what I'm asking for, you know, I'd like us to be able to be looking at it and saying, okay, this is what we need to do. What do we need to do in order to get that official map or a zoning ordinance? I think every month we should be looking at something to add to it and develop it.
Eric, can you kind of reference what's included in the official map?
Yeah, good idea.
elements?
The official map, obviously, you need a good and reasonably accurate base map to work from. And then it's really a matter of sitting down and looking at where you want, need, or desire these street extensions to be long-term in the future. Sometimes we identify those things as part of a comprehensive plan process, but we didn't really do that. It kind of never came about. So some good thought will need to be put into just kind of examining all the lands, you know, within the city and where you might want some of those extensions. Same would go with trails and parklands. So there's going to be some homework, you know, by the committee to think about these things, maybe staff kind of, you know, some working sessions. And then really it's a matter of putting the map together in a way that meets the state standards in terms of information accuracy. That's not the most difficult part by any means, but you do have to be cautious about, you know, what goes on that map and where and how. And then there's an adoption process. So it could take, you know, it could take as little as 3 months, but 3 to 6 months, you know, working on it periodically, getting some progress is probably more of the norm. So this plan theoretically will not be adopted by the council until probably their March meeting.
Mhm.
So I wouldn't necessarily rush into it or on your next meeting have something on there necessarily. But in the interim, if you at least wanted to get familiar with it, you could just, you know, go to the state statutes online and search official map and it'll come up, and just read the page or so that deals with official maps. Get yourself familiar with it a little bit. So
You're thinking we should start it after?
I think to be safe, to make sure the council agrees with the priorities, that once it's adopted, then that would kind of give you the signal to start moving forward on some of these things. Now, obviously, if there's contracts needed, subcontracts, you know, working with consultant, other things, you're going to have to factor in going through that process. I don't even know if there's anything in your budget for it. So
should have a handle on them dead end roads and extensions. So that we have the right to, you know, say, no, we are coming through here.
yeah,
Let's figure out how this is gonna happen.
it puts landowners on notice. It puts neighbors on notice. Well, my realtor told me, you know, those kinds of things. So it is a very important tool.
And I'm assuming there's a process where you get input from the neighbors as well, outside the city limits.
Been a little while since I read the statutes. I don't think during its development that you're absolutely required to do that. Not even sure if notices are required to those individual landowners. I'd have to go back and check, but certainly things would be prepared and adopted in a public forum.
Yeah.
And be opportunities for public comment. But yeah, it shouldn't be done just super quick and we're completed with it. That's it. You need to put some thought and some time into it, obviously. Official map, certainly one of the priorities.
Do you see that happening with technology today? Is it typically just becomes a layer in the GIS?
Oh, it certainly could and should be. I think it's something that should be out there and available to the public to look at and review. It is a regulatory document, if you will, much like the zoning ordinance,
Mhm.
so. Other thoughts on those 5 recommendations and tasks, or if anything should be switched out with other actions that are noted in this section? You know, you may find a year or 2 down the road that, you know, based on trends or other new things happening, that some of those priorities may shift, obviously. Something always comes along that didn't think of it, oh, we need to switch gears and deal with this now. So that's just reality. But I think trying to make the case that, and some stronger statements about what really needs to happen in the short term is going to be beneficial for the community. Hopefully the council will have a better understanding of the needs to and provide the support that's needed to do those things.
And there's obviously some budget concern or budget things we got to think about for these things for long term. So just so the commission knows, we have put in to the capital projects request some money for zoning, updating the zoning at this point in time. So that's in as a request, hasn't been approved yet by the council, but that is in our plan for being a request at this time.
It sounds like there's general agreement on the 5 there. You will get a few more kicks at the cat. So if you think something needs to change down the road, we can certainly do that. In fact, we'll be taking a look at the plan in its entirety at your January meeting. So if you've got some other thoughts on that, we can certainly discuss and modify things at next month's meeting as well. I'll see what I can do here, though, maybe just to make a note or somehow elevate that official map 1, you know, more to the top, given the conversation here today. Starting on that second page and all the other recommendations and actions, again, these were taken from the previous plan elements that were discussed, but did anyone have any questions, concerns? Leftover items from when we kind of talked about them the first time? I just want to make sure that things are clear. Again, there are no comprehensive plan police out there, making sure that you're implementing things based on the timing that's shown in these actions. The timing is maybe more of an ideal, so don't get too stressed out about that. But if capacity and resources exist, yes, some of these things would be great to do sooner rather than later. And obviously, some of the responsibilities are going to fall to other groups, not just all through the plan commission. Although I would argue it would be good for the plan commission on an annual basis to look at the plan and kind of take stock of implementation. And did we do these things? Is someone else working on this? And just kind of being in the know of where things are at.
Eric, when we apply for grants, don't they typically go and look at our comprehensive plan and see how what we're asking falls into that plan? Are we following through in order to get us higher on the list?
Yeah, depending on the nature of the grants, a lot of times they will ask if there's any planning, you know, behind, you know, your request. And most often the comprehensive plan is the document that's referred to. It's always good if there's a statement or a task, an action in there that mirrors exactly what you're applying, you know, for grant funds for. It helps support it. But if you can further say something in the grant narrative to the effect that, you know, the plan commission and the city take this plan seriously regarding implementation, and we've already done X, Y, and Z, and now it's time for this, it's going to give a bit more confidence to the funder. You know, depending on the nature of the grant, you know, the comp plan stuff might be 1 point out of 100, or maybe it's 10 out of 100. It depends. But again, I still think most funders want some level of comfort or assurance that this community is going to follow through. They know what they're doing. They got their vision set. They know what their target is versus a community that, you can read into it pretty easily in a grant or their comp plans that seems a little wishy-washy, that, we haven't seen a lot of things change in your community. So it becomes important in that sense, yes. All right, again, keep looking at this and you'll see it again as part of the complete document, but if you've got other thoughts or changes or questions, we can certainly entertain those next month. I'm gonna jump over to just page 9-7, section 9.4. There's some additional stuff in this implementation chapter beyond just the summary of the recommendations. Some is required by statutes, but we did want to update and list the status and the changes to the land use related regulations. We kind of give an overview there. And then there's various bit of narrative on, excuse me, on many of the things that are listed in your code in terms of the status and recommended changes. And a lot of these changes we discussed previously, again, in the element. These more or less elaborate a little bit on some of the recommendations that are contained right prior. When we said update the zoning ordinance, we've got a little bit more information here on a few things that need to be looked at based on what's in the plan. Same with land division, site plan review, and those types of things. So again, my intent isn't to go through page by page and word by word on this, but wanted to make sure you understood why that narrative is in there, how it relates to the recommendations and tasks, and certainly just make sure that there's no questions or concerns or errors in those elements. Although Tad is usually pretty good at identifying the errors. No highlights for me today.
I was just gonna bring up the code of ordinances and I can't remember when we met last, if we talked about that, but we're going through a codification process right now. We don't have a deadline, we don't have the timeline what's gonna get done, but all our chapters are gonna be redone. So I'm assuming when this is adopted, that's what it was at the adoption, but if we redo these chapter numbers all change, do we have to go in here and do an amendment?
You're not forced to or required. There are things that will change over time throughout the document, so it's not an absolute necessity. But if you find that the council, the plan commission, other entities have been looking at that, referencing it, and it's all wrong, you could certainly go in there and make some changes and update that. It's really editorial. I don't think the statutes do a good job at differentiating between types of amendments where it's just editorial. It's not really changing any policies or the vision, and just go ahead and do it. So I want to be cautious on saying that, because you still may need to do the official notice, public hearing, and all those kind of things. If that's the case, if and when you do that, I would at least scan the rest of the document to see if there are a bunch of other things that need updating, make it worth
Do it once.
your while and do it once. So. I'll skip over to page 9-12. Little additional information in here. 9.6 deals strictly with that comprehensive plan amendment and update process. The statutes require that you elaborate on what that process will be. This pretty much mirrors what most comprehensive plans have within it, and I don't think we really changed anything from what was in the prior comprehensive plan. It's a fairly straightforward process, step by step, and then obviously every 10 years the city should consider revisiting and updating the plan. You aren't absolutely required to update the plan at 10 years, but at a minimum you should give some strong thought to what's changed over the last 10 years. Obviously this past 10 years a lot changed very quickly. I don't know if that's going to happen again over these next 10 years, although we made a breakthrough on fusion. So I don't know what that means. So I don't know if there's any questions regarding those procedures on pages 9, 12, and 9, 13. Essentially the process we're going to be following to adopt the updated plan. Page 9, 14, section 9.7 talks more about integration and consistency of planning elements. There are some requirements within the statutes that I'm going to say ideally they would like the plan to be consistent, not only internally, that you don't have statements that conflict with one another. Sometimes you find that in a zoning ordinance, and you may have some of those in there.
We do.
But I think to the best of our knowledge, you've got that consistency internally. External consistency ideally would be your plan matches up very well and is not in conflict with any of your neighbors' plans. And I'm guessing for the most part, that is probably true. As part of the adoption process, I'm going to strongly suggest to the city that notices, that public hearing notice go out to your adjacent and overlapping units of government so that they are aware ahead of time and have an opportunity to come to the public hearing, or at least give Chad or Dave or somebody a call in the interim if they've got questions or concerns. If there are some objections by the neighboring communities, that does not automatically prevent you from adopting the plan. Ideally, you figure out what those are. Maybe there's some solution and some tweaks that could be made. But if it's just no way in heck do we want you annexing in our town, well, all right, they put it on the record, but it's not going to stop you from annexing additional lands. And then just quickly, page 9, 16. There's a few additional goals and objectives in this implementation element, and I don't think we really changed any of those under section 9.9 on page 9, 16, or the implementation policies and recommendations on page 9, 17 under section 9.10. Those are all good, fairly basic recommendations and statements regarding implementation, I think, and I don't think anything more needs to be added or removed from there. So no, anything that's kind of more geared as a task within there, such as the very last one, updating it. I'm sorry, we stated in there 5. I've got an inconsistency in there. It should be reviewed in detail every 5 years, but updated at least every 10 years. But again, at that 10-year time frame, if you feel everything's pretty much the same, not much has changed, and you're not going to gain a lot from updating it, then you could go longer than that, certainly. But I think you need to go on record saying that, so there's some documentation that a good faith effort was made to look at it and make that determination of whether it needs to be updated or not. But as a planner, we still typically recommend do it every 10 years. You can think of it also that, you know, they've been a little slow getting the 2020 census data out. It's still not out, will be soon. But if you stick with this general time frame, your next update should coincide with the 2030 census data, ideally. So that's not a bad time frame to just kind of be on, wait for that census data to come out, then look at updating your plan. Any other thoughts or questions, concerns in this element? I know we've got a new person here, so you're gonna have to catch up and read all other 8 chapters.
I read all this already.
Oh, did you? All right, good.
I'm a map guy, so I was staring at the maps and back.
Very good. Very good. All right. Appreciate your time on that. Again, just know that January we'll have another chance to make some modifications or answer questions or concerns as it pertains to this element or any of the previous ones. Can see I've got the full draft nearly completed. There's a few holes I'm still filling in, working with staff on a couple of things. We've got to double check the mapping work. But all in all, plan is coming together nicely and shouldn't be much thicker than this. Last thing is the future land use map. And I believe everyone had a copy of that in the packet. Obviously, we did a lot of modifications to this last year. Was it early this year? Time escapes me now. But did a little bit of an overhaul because there were some priority items to deal with. So we did that separate with the land use chapter. Looking at the map, as far as specific changes that might be warranted, I don't think there's a lot of them. Things that come to my mind, basically 3 things that I would like to maybe change or add to this map. One is we should recognize the new library facility in the downtown and just change the location, which is just mixed use downtown commercial, and we'll find the appropriate spot, color that blue, so it's public and institutional, recognize that. We also talked, at least at the staff level, about putting a graphic on here over the Highway 15 and 45 intersection that would indicate, from the city's perspective, a future roundabout. Obviously, those are DOT owned and controlled facilities. There's processes, other things that need to go through, but you as a community, if that's your desire, you have every right to put it on your map saying that's our vision. Whether DOT agrees with it or not is sort of separate, process. But it certainly can't hurt putting in an official plan like this. And then the last thing, just looking at adding a few graphics on top with some kind of highlight or an arrow or indicator at basically each entry point to the major entry point to the community in terms of referencing the gateways. And there are a number of recommendations that call for looking at some design standards or some enhancements for development at the gateways to the community. So Shawano Street coming from the north, I always forget the name, Mill Street coming in from the southeast. I think both those areas, we also talked about potentially doing some redevelopment plans over time. So we'd like to just add some graphics, some indicator that gives the sense that these are the gateways to the community. There might be some other work done in those areas over time. So those were the 3 changes that I was going to suggest, and it sounds like, based on head nods, it sounds like you're all comfortable with those. Were there any other changes or things that people would like to see changed on the map, particularly with respect to the land use designations, locations of them, things of that nature? And again, you'll still have more time if something comes to mind, but I wanted to check in.
See, we may not have the current library as blue. Which corner is that on? Cook? Somewhere in here.
No, I think it's further to south, isn't it? It's one of those.
No, this is schools. That's Washington. That's way down here.
Oh,
So it is right in here somewhere. So we'll just have to
Yeah.
get that on there as well, as long as we're putting on the
yeah.
future one for the downtown, the new one.
The museum is staying in that facility, right?
As of this point, that's the intent. Yep.
Things could change, but
Shan, could you go down to the bottom of the map?
You want me to go
towards the
south?
15? Yep.
Yep.
So the part that still belongs to the town of Hortonia in there, coming up along Mill Street there. What does it take to annex that, to clean everything up? And it's hard to develop there right now. I think I've got people, fast food restaurants looking at it, but there's no water and sewer down there or anything like that.
So the dotted line,
We had this discussion once before about how they're even connected to Hortonia anymore, and it's only because of the railroad tracks, correct?
there's something, this little island in here is still at Hortonia. So I was told years ago, I have no clue if this is true or not, because it's an island, that the railroad tracks, that's the connection to Hortonia. I don't know if that's true or not. But yeah, like this little bit's Hortonia. But down in here, we've got the city limits that stops at Highway 45. obviously whoever owns this property has to petition to annex. Now, there's some DOT property in here, so that makes it a little bit more complicated, but I would think that, the next landowner down here, whoever owns that or purchases it, would have to petition to annex. And then there would have to be some type of process with the state to see if they would be interested in annexing, and then you've crossed Highway 45 for getting in city limits. But then there's a consideration of the water and sewer, and how does that get across as well? So.
I don't believe an annexation petition would happen unless they really wanted or needed the sewer and water. Obviously, from a planning standpoint, if there's going to be significant development out there, yes, you should have sewer and water.
The utilities was looking for a possible well site south of there at one time, but our water consumption has declined with our largest customers. So we don't have the need to explore for a well currently. But that is an area where we would like to have one. We have 2 pressure zones that meet by Beckert and Mill Street. So we kind of get a 2-for-1 if we bring a well into that area, because we can feed either zone off of that well. So an investment of $1 million for a well by the utilities, that would be a utilized area that we would look at, but our water consumption has gone down with our largest suppliers. So we're not exploring another well at this time.
You were looking at River Road at one time.
Yeah, we had a potential site out on River Road. We have extended our 3-phase power out to River Road currently. So it was to R&L Electric, and then because of the bypass, we had to relocate our electric facilities. So now we have underground facilities and a 3-phase cabinet all the way to River Road. So that would be one thing that if a larger customer was interested in developing something in that way, that was something that we looked at. But also if our parameters change at any time and we do have to come up with a larger supply of water, or if we would have a couple of our wells, because the utility wells that we have are, we maintain them very well. Hillshire at one time had 6 operating wells. They now have none. So we provide them solely with water currently. So if their needs would change at any time and we would have to acquire another well, then we would explore those options.
Is there any benefit, again, just sort of from a graphic standpoint of putting, sort of a dash circle kind of around that general area and indicating future well site or potential future well site?
Well, there's a study process that goes in, so we can't just put an X on the map.
Okay.
We have to spend some engineering dollars, and then they have to do some site preparation. It's a long process. It's not just as simple as going, we want to put a well here.
Yeah, right. But if you kind of know that that's the general area, I mean, we could kind of put an indicator. It's not going to be official. It'll be just a little more informational. Someone looking at the map, or if you've got businesses or business representatives looking at this area, it might give them some, oh, I see that they might put a well out here. That could be good for us. So, but I don't want to cause problems either.
And Jeff, to talk about sewer and possibly water, we did implement TID number 5 to number 6. We just did a TID district over in here. So if these landowners, current or future landowners would want petition to annex, and then we annex, I'm not saying that's a for sure thing, but there would be the possibility to consider possibly to extend the TID district, and maybe that helps finance is sewer and water is eligible for TID.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, that could help finance the extension of the water and sewer in that area, maybe. So, but
It's
that's,
just the proximity to Highway 45 there on the south side of town. It seems like there's a lot of missed opportunities with just the traffic going by there compared to the north side, because you're farther away from all the businesses and stuff. They're not as exposed. I don't know what you could do to change that. It just seems like there's some opportunity for some fast food or something, gas station maybe there.
and that's why I think we've indicated that as, highway commercial, that's all the red. So we've indicated that that's a good potential for future expansion.
Okay.
All these colors are just saying that that's what we intend, or foresee for the developments outside the city limits. So, but now we didn't have a TID district over here. Now we do. So that, gives us an opportunity because I think that water sewer expansion was a financial burden or hurdle. Well, we got a TID district now. That's a tool that we could possibly use. And maybe people after maybe after the Highway 15 expansion will come forward. Maybe they're waiting on that to get that done. I don't know.
Are there opportunities during the construction to figure out exactly where the utilities are gonna cross their sewer and water? I know in
sewer
some
water.
cases,
We have
leaves under things.
We acquired an electric easement through there because if it's a DOT project and it falls within the right of way, then we have to use ratepayer funds. We can't charge them to move the facilities.
Yeah.
So we acquired our own easement for those electric facilities. We do have a possible site. We talked about stubbing water out at that time, but we need a development to pay for those. I can't use ratepayer funds to install water main just out to a facility. So unfortunately, the PSC tells me I can't do that.
Well, again, certainly it's going to be one of your opportunity areas eventually. It sounds like everyone's comfortable for what's colored on the map, at least in that area. Any other questions or thoughts about the map? And again, like I said, you'll be getting an updated document and map later in January. So there's still more time that we can make some changes and tweaks before it goes to council. Probably a good time to talk about how we'll wrap this process up then. If I've got my dates correct on my calendar, your next meeting is January 26th.
Thinking about changing it to the 27th.
Are you? That shouldn't make a lot of difference on my end at least. But we would have the entire draft plan to you at least a week prior. If I can get the final gaps filled and things formatted most of the way, maybe we can try and get it out to you earlier so you've got more time to thumb through it. But we would hope that at that January meeting, the Plan Commission is comfortable or make some recommendations. Yeah, we like it, but we want to see this change and that added, whatever it might be. So you could approve it to go out basically for the public review process. So I want this Plan Commission to be comfortable with the document before it formally goes out through that process. Then we would look at scheduling the public hearing for what's likely to be your next regular meeting for February 23rd. We would need to get that notice published by January 25th though, because there's a 30-day requirement. February is a short month. So we would actually need to publish that notice right about the time you have your meeting or before. So I don't know how risky that is, because if the Plan Commission doesn't approve it to go out for public review, and they've published a notice already. So I want to think about that. It sounds like everyone's pretty well on board with the plan, so I'm not expecting that. If that's the case, then after the public hearing, the Plan Commission would consider any comments. If there are none or they're not substantial in your mind, you could take action that evening on the resolution, recommend resolution to the City Council. And then we would look at having the council take action on March 21st, I think would be your regular meeting date. And the council would entertain the resolution recommended by this body for plan adoption. And then they would also adopt an ordinance separately, which conforms to the state statutes and puts the plan in ordinance format. So should be as simple as that. But I guess, we go through that process to see if there's major concerns, objections, and it will be up to this body to to determine whether you hold that plan and we work on it and make a few tweaks, or if we just push forward, sending it to the council. I don't expect controversy. Haven't seen a lot of people here from the public at these meetings interested in the conversation. Certainly been welcome, but never say never. Sometimes you find a surprise.
Eric, did you say January 25th did work better in your schedule than the 26th?
I don't think it makes a difference, but let me double check my calendar here. Luck would have it. Do have another commitment on the 25th. We're in Sherwood. Probably not one that I can move easily.
Just to throw it out there, not saying that this is what we do, but do you guys know if there's basketball on the 19th? That we have the planning commission on the 19th, so
the
that the
19th is-
notice, there's a game?
No,
Oh, there's not a game.
Unfortunately, I've got another meeting commitment in Kiwanee that night.
Just to throw it out there.
If you wanted to do that, I could certainly see if Ken's available to kind of cover, I'm not expecting there's going to be a whole host of really detailed questions, but certainly I would love to be here for that.
We want to go to the 24th.
24th would work.
I can't.
Huh?
I mean, but I don't have to be here either. I mean, now that we have more people on the committee.
Yep.
Anybody have preference on there?
Let me just leave it up to you guys to do what you need to do, and I'll figure things out on my end. Not the first time it's happened. We've got multiple staff, and I might be able to get someone else to cover this other meeting I have in Sherwood. Yeah, so going to do the 25th. All right, we'll make it work. Feels good to be needed. It's a hassle sometimes. Okay, I'll pencil in the 25th here. And send the full draft of the plan out. I'll just jot down on a separate memo or something what the intended approval schedule is. So you have that in front of you on paper, so you know. Any other thoughts or comments? Good. Appreciate your time, patience, working through this. It takes a while, I know, but I think your updated plan is much improved. Certainly going to connect more with the time, what's going on now here recently, and it sounds like everyone's comfortable, and you can easily explain the plan to your neighbors now, right?
You mentioned the comment before about for like a roundabout on 45 and stuff. Does
Yeah,
that have any pressure, say, with the DOT when they decide what they're going to do if the community says they'd want a roundabout there?
it's going to be better than not having it on the map, because it's a formal planning document that the community, that, shares the community's ideas and formalizes that. And I know the council, I think, is going on record asking that be the case, and I think it's perfectly appropriate to put it in this plan and on that map, so it's very clear. But again, it's not going to be 100% promise that DOT will go that way, but it certainly gives you more of an argument.
The council approved a resolution, and Outagamie County approved the resolution asking the DOT to consider the roundabout there, so.
Yeah, over the years, I remember having a conversation with the DOT staff, kind of grilling me, what are you doing having the communities put this in their plan? DOT's not gonna go for that. I said, well, it's not DOT's plan. Plain and simple. You have your jurisdiction, they have theirs, and if that's what they want, there's no reason they shouldn't put it on their map. Doesn't mean they're gonna get it, but it's your plan.
Should tell the DOT they'd have one less problem. People already were for it.
Yeah.
Well, if there's nothing else, again, I appreciate your time. Have a happy holidays and we'll certainly see you next year.
You as well.
I'll stay in touch with Chad and Dave on things. If you had any questions or anything, you know where to find me. So, thanks again. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good evening. Dave, your turn.
All right, so we put the fee schedule into a policy form per Chad's request, so I made a couple minor clerical changes on here, and then today I ran across an issue with one other fee that didn't make the cut that needs to be on here. Our permits are good for a year. Once they expire, there is, should and could be a fee to put it out for another year. State allows 2 years, but by ordinance, we only do 1. So a couple months ago, we got a electrical, someone final on electrical permit. So I sent John out there. So I've been kind of filling in the new software, putting in inspections and what the results were and stuff. So we've been working together. And so I kept looking for this permit for this property that we're at. So I got a hold of the owner. He said, oh yeah, that's permit was from 2010. Yeah. So I'm like, well, it should have been an updated one. So the way our ordinance is right now, if the permit expires after a year, we charge half of what the original permit fee was to extend that out for an additional year. So I'd like to add that, even though it's not on here, I just ran across it today. I'd like to add that to the final commercial and residential side of this.
To extend it as long as it's back to back, correct?
Pardon?
To extend it as long as it's back to back, right? Not like this guy
Correct.
was in 2010, didn't finish
Absolutely.
it, so he wants. to
Yeah, and I'm
extend
not gonna go back 10 years, obviously.
it. Right.
So it's an illegal building to begin with because it's just two-story garage. So it got approved a long time ago by somebody. So anyway, he was getting ready to insulate it and wanted to have an electrical inspection done. So it was just kind of funny that it wasn't 1 year old or 2. It was,
Yeah.
12. So anyway, then I noticed that we didn't have that fee transferred over from the old feed schedule. So I want to put that in there. So that would be the only change.
So you would add, to extend a permit up to another year at
Right.
half the cost of what the original permit was.
Half the cost of the original permit.
Okay.
Yep.
I had a question about the whole thing in general. Do you have a number? I know the city wants to not take so much out of the general fund. Do you have a number that you're working towards for all these permits to meet? So you can be self-funded from the permits?
I want to say my budget's, I'm just guessing. I think it was like 134, and that's for everything that's in my budget.
And do you know, like, if you took all of these fees off of the previous year's permits, then where that number would lie?
I was kind of thinking about that today,
So
how
are you,
much work that would be to
is
go
it,
from
is it
permit to
kind of
permit.
in the ballpark, or are we gonna, and then if you have a big surplus, were you thinking of, presenting this to the council again and saying, we're gonna trim these backs to meet that budget, or?
So for the fee, it used to be part of the ordinance. We're gonna make it an appendix so that we can go in and tweak things over time. If we
Okay.
decide that, hey, maybe we're a little heavy on, say, a new construction for a family home, that we can go in and tweak that without having to go through some big process. We can just change it, and it'll basically say that the fee schedule is available through the clerk's office. So even though it'll be published and, on our website and stuff, that we can change it without a big revamp of the fee schedule. So sometimes you will have a surplus on good years, but then sometimes, the next year, COVID or whatever hits, and then now you've got a little bit of money in reserves, but
Yep.
my goal is to at least double what we've been bringing in. So this year we're at right about 60,000. So I'm hoping to be
Okay.
about 120. And that'll get us within 10 or 15,000 of the budget for the department, which is kind of where you want to be.
And we talked about that, we definitely need more manpower in that area.
Yeah.
But I didn't feel comfortable proposing that yet. I wanted to run this for a year,
Right.
let it
Yep.
see what happens, and then we can start talking about, is this adequate for hiring the second person and things, so.
Question about these. Did you figure these by like what it takes like per hour or for your time doing this or?
Some of it, we went by the number of inspections it's going to take to complete a job. And where before, say we did 2 inspections, some of them were like capturing $35. And especially using Kunkel for some of our commercial and electrical stuff. You got to make it beneficial so that the service that we're providing is kind of covered. So we
Well,
did
that
look at all
was-
that.
That was kind of what I was looking at. Some of them are like $45, some are 50, some are 75. Is that because it takes less time to do some of them?
Yeah. So like on a roof, I think those were at 75. It's basically just a drive by, get some binoculars out, make sure they, got the cap on and, vents where they need vents. And then sometimes you'll drive by while they're doing it to make sure that they're doing their step flashing and stuff like that. But we tried to kind of hit a minimum of 50 on stuff for at least one inspection. And that'll kind of cover, because they get paid mileage plus, having to come in here. So.
But I think the other consideration, because they talked about, and they looked at what the other municipalities, remember Berlin we looked at, Wapaka we looked at, so it was a comparison with that, or that was
Yeah,
a
I think
factor.
there
as
definitely
well.
should be a minimum. Like some of them are $30 plus zoning, which I don't know what that would be, but $25 plus zoning. I mean, shouldn't it just be like a $50 minimum type thing,
We tried to do minimums on several of them, but I might not have caught all of them. Like I said, this could be kind of a working document. I think we want to get close to where we want to be, but I would think we might want to tweak it over time as we see areas where we might be light or even heavy to go in and move some numbers if we feel the need.
Dave, can you
Do that every
explain?
year when you plan your budget? Do a review.
So hopefully this new software, it's got really good report capabilities. So now that I'm capturing some numbers, we might be able to run some reports where we can kind of look at how it balanced from year to year.
Right.
So should be able to get some more information as time goes by.
I have one question, Dave, on the erosion control. There was one there where the fee was 75, and then down farther, there was one where there's no fee. What's the difference?
There's what?
There's no charge.
Um,
There's erosion control and there's no charge there just below moving permits.
Yeah, it might have, when we typed it up, we might have not realized we already had that in
Oh.
there. So
Okay.
You on residential or commercial?
I can clean that up.
No,
Residential.
Residential.
I'll make sure I look through that.
Actually go down the first one.
There's one for 75 and then there's one that says nothing.
And is that a header maybe for some stuff underneath it? I don't recall.
It's on the bottom.
so.
Huh?
First one's just below occupancy. Page 2.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'll fix
That
that.
one just got to get eliminated then, huh?
Okay.
The one where zero is, there's nothing there. You're 75, whatever, yeah.
Okay.
Okay. That's something, Jeff?
How
On mine.
is this fee schedule? Is this something you've always had, or is this just being developed now?
Once.
Where are you at in the process with this? How long have you
Oh,
been
wait a
working on this?
How about here?
This is
There
the
you go.
third introduction at a planning commission
So you
meeting.
get the erosion
I'm
one
hoping
here,
tonight to maybe move this on to
and
council.
then just at the
We've
bottom.
spent
Erosion control.
probably close to 6 months working on this. We
Right there.
took some of Berlin's stuff and kind of used that as a
Just a
template because they
double
just redid their fee schedule. And then like we looked at Wapaka. you know, they're pulling in over $300,000 in permits. So we got looking at some of the fees on there, and some of them were pretty hefty. So we tried to kind of be in the middle of the road. We don't want to be the high one, but we definitely don't want to be the low one either.
I don't think your fees are out of line, but some of the things that you're charging for, like putting in a new furnace or a new hot water heater or something like that, I think you're kind of sticking your nose in where it does a vent for a bathroom for $55. Seems like you're kind of sticking your money in your hands in people's pockets where you maybe
Mhm.
shouldn't be or don't have to. I
Yeah.
mean, people replace furnaces every day.
Mhm.
I've got some experience with this with the county in Wapaka and the town of Lebanon. We have our own fee schedules. And I coughed a couple times in the office today and I looked at this and wondered if I had to get a permit for that or not. I mean, this is getting a little,
If you've got a licensed
Little dicey.
contractor putting it in, you're probably right. You probably aren't gonna have an issue, but some of them are cutting corners to beat the other guys, so it's maybe not vented right or have a chimney liner in it.
you know,
A homeowner can technically put in their own, and if you don't have something in the ordinance, they can, you know, a water heater can be a pretty dangerous piece of equipment. So it probably nice to have a set of eyes on it that knows what they're looking at and see, but.
So who's looking at it then? Are you going before they put
I'm
in?
do the residential mechanical and John Lust does the commercial stuff.
So here's an example. This is the Wapaka one that we kind of talked about. It looks like they're charging as well for repair and replacement for HVAC.
What is it now?
He's just
For like a
showing that
furnace.
Wapaka is charging for
This
that.
is Wapaka's as a comparison.
I just don't think we belong there at all. I don't care what the fee is.
Well, my concern, here's my concern going along with that is I get home from work on Friday night and my heater's out and it's 20 degrees outside. I need to get somebody over there taking care of getting my heater fixed, replaced, a new one in, whatever happens. And I can't wait until Monday morning to go get a permit or have them go get a permit.
We haven't been
What?
holding up anybody on that scenario that you're talking about.
How does that work though, how do I get a permit to replace my furnace when I'm trying to get somebody out there to take care of it at, 5, 6 o'clock on Friday, hoping they can get this done? I know I'm paying through the nose over the weekend to get this done, or do I wait?
Don't take a total permit after the fact. On something like that, we're not gonna have it. We try to work with our contractors, but like I said, those are pieces of equipment that the state regulates. So it isn't
No, I
like-
understand
it's like
that.
we're the only ones doing it. I think that's definitely a piece of equipment that someone that's trained to look at. It's the my personal opinion.
What's the sprinkler for? Is that indoor, outdoor sprinklers?
That's for fire inside the building. Yeah, we don't have anything. The only thing you have to worry about there is possibly some cross contamination. The only thing that could potentially cause an issue.
I stand by my comments. I think you're reaching liberty that people's pockets. Really don't care if you guys or not.
Is there already fees in place for what he's talking about? Or is that something that was all just added?
No, we have those in place now. So like for furnace is 35, we pump that a little bit, because obviously we need to get the vehicle over there to make sure.
So is
There's a lot.
there any new ones on this list that you added that we didn't have?
Oh, yeah.
Solar?
Yeah, those first ones that were in red that you saw in the last few minutes, those are all.
So Jeff, kind of go off of your comment where you're saying you think the fees are too much?
No,
Or you
fees
don't-
aren't too much. I don't think there should be an inspection or need a permit for doing some of that stuff. We don't,
There's,
I mean, the Wapaka County, years ago, we left our town of Lebanon zoning and went with Wapaka County because then there wouldn't be, our zoning sometimes didn't match exactly what they wanted and we'd be butting heads all the time. So we said, great, Wapaka County, go ahead and do it. well, that was, I don't know, 8, 10 years ago. Well, they got into this now too, where they figured out it could be a cash cow for them and they just started coming up with more stuff you needed permits for and raises the prices and all that stuff. And I don't think it's right.
I can tell you this much.
What's that?
So I can tell you this much. I sure do like the fact that we have a process to go through to have inspections. God bless my neighbor, but he is no mechanic. And he is no wiring technician.
Mhm.
And God forbid, he goes and tries doing some of that and blows our whole block up.
But he'll do it anyway, whether he's got a permit or not.
I'm just saying that's something that
That's
we're
kinda
doing
your-
here.
Yeah.
But we don't have any recourse if we don't have that implemented
Right.
as a process. So if somebody puts a water heater in and we don't have a permit or an inspection, then we have no recourse to modify him and make him make the correction. You know, and you say it's a water heater, but you could go on YouTube and fail to put a pressure relief valve in that water heater because that individual is not a licensed plumber and he blows that water heater sky high. Does the city accept some responsibility because we did not require him to get a permit? In that case, I think we would, you know, because every other community has that in place. So I think that would open us up to some sort of liability, and that's why we have the process.
In the day and age that we are in, you're
You
absolutely
know, you can
correct.
go on YouTube and go, yeah, I watched a video and I know exactly what I'm doing, but yet he may have installed the venting improperly, and that's where Dave comes in and says, you know, hey, I understand you wanted to save some money and do this. You're gonna have to make this correction before you can turn this device on.
But you
So-
got the other side of the thing too, where by going in there and inspecting that, and if we miss something, then we are liable. Well, we inspected it, you said it was good, and now something happened,
Good
well,
point.
you automatically put yourself there too, so I
Good
don't go
point.
for that argument.
The other thing that I have, just to comment on it, what happens if someone doesn't get a permit? Are you fining them for not
It's
getting a
double the
permit?
per-
I mean,
yeah,
if you,
Double the fee.
It's double the fee.
okay, okay.
That was in
the
there,
way-
wasn't it?
That's the way most of them are, is if you don't get it and then you get caught, it's double.
So who's gonna catch them though?
I do sometimes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right. Because I'm just looking, I just had put that new roof on my house this year. I didn't have a permit. I mean,
We didn't
Anna?
require them.
we didn't require it. Okay,
We are now,
okay.
because we had 6 or 8 people calling up that we had some shoddy out of town roofers come in and
You know, I guess I mean, I understand and I respect that and I think that's great, but I also think that's part of being a homeowner, that you are hiring responsible contractors and not the fly-by-night ones that are coming into town and trying to make it quick.
Well, I'll comment on that. I hired an in-town contractor. They put 2 roofs on my house in the same week. So I mean, talking about fly by night, you don't know who you're getting nowadays.
What do you mean you had 2 roofs in one?
They tore it off. I made them tear it off and redo
Oh.
it because they didn't do a good job. And that's a local established company. And just to make on your comment of the fly by night, somebody coming from Texas is no different than your next door neighbor that
Right.
has his company here
In your situation, you had a contractor that subcontracted it out.
to another local company.
So it wasn't even the contractor that you hired in
Right.
your case.
All right.
I guess I kind of look at this and I say, as a homeowner, if I have to have my heater or my water heater replaced, and, you know, I get my neighbor who does this stuff on the side and he replaces it and something happens, my homeowner's insurance is going to have an issue with me for not having it done properly. I mean, I've got to deal with my homeowner's insurance. And I've got to be more concerned about that, in my opinion, as a homeowner, than I do about the city coming in and taking a look at stuff. I got to make sure that my,
Homeowners insure negligence. That the insurance insures negligence.
if I have a professional do the work, not if I have Junior across the road do the work.
Sure does.
I don't know.
And that's the same thing. If you have Junior across the road do the work and he comes in and inspects and make sure it's done right, you're kind of covering yourself there too. So.
True.
I know nobody wants to pay fees, but. Probably.
Like insurance. Who wants to pay him for insurance? Do you need it?
Mhm.
Anything else, Dave?
No, unless we want to table it for the next meeting, if we could do that, but
I.
kind of want to
we've
move this
kinda
on to
beat this
council.
dog to
if
We
they
beat it
prefer.
enough. Yeah, I agree with you.
So are you looking for a motion then to,
I am
to move on?
to
what we're
recommend
looking-
for approval from the
This
council.
would ultimately go to the council then for, the fees, approve those well, so.
I guess we're looking for a motion to propose, to approve new fee schedule.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
Motion made in second. All in favor?
Right.
Opposed?
Aye.
Abstain?
So there was one nay, I heard?
One nay.
Yeah.
Okay. Just want to make sure I understood that right.
I'm not getting my new roof from next year. So no.
Discuss upcoming agenda items.
Well, it sounds like the comp plan will be ready for the next meeting. We also have SC Swiderski putting together a packet for the planning commission to go over for the next meeting, and that might take a little bit of time to go through. There'll be landscape plans, parking, and so on that we need to look at, and we have a potential parking issue that might have to work through as a commission. Based on what they propose, they're about 62 parking spots short of what's required by ordinance. So we're gonna have to get creative in seeing if there's some type of solution to work through that. So, I think
So whose responsibility is that to work through? Is that our creativity
that's
or
your-
their creativity?
both of ours, it'll be, so you folks will be the one approving the plan that SC's
Or unapproving.
proposing. Yeah, or not.
We've got an updated engineering meeting next week to start talking about a bunch of different things, so.
Because I don't want to, I mean, negate that whole thing
Yeah.
if there's some solutions that can be brought to us.
Currently, our ordinance requires 2.5 spots per unit. And they don't have the space. So we may have to get creative. I guess that happened at the last project they did in, I forget what city it was, one of the cities by here that they just did. Or they gave them a variance, but we're gonna have to really put some thought into,
It's kind of
not
more,
like it's 10 spots.
more than a variance.
Yeah,
What did you say, 63?
62 spots short.
And how wide is each spot?
That's all,
That's all
yeah,
figured
the
in.
engineers have that all laid out, what they're supposed to be. So.
That's going to be on the next.
So that, as far as I know, that's the only 2 agenda items. And then
They're already
we
getting
settle
there,
on the
I know.
25th.
Creative.
Yeah.
They can start parking like we do down at the post office. We start hugging those lines and trying to get 2 cars into 2 spots.
We'll have to buy the post.
Parking
vehicles
garage.
so they can-
Okay, we review our next meeting date. Looks like we're going to go for the 25th.
Is that what we agreed on?
Yeah.
Okay.
He said he thought he could maybe get somebody else here for a comprehensive plan.
Well, that's all I have.
That would be tentative to make sure that all works out with them.
Yeah, look for a motion to adjourn.
I'll make that motion.